Today I've decided to be brave and to share with you some of my most uncomfortable, most vulnerable and excruciatingly painful experiences that I have come across in my journey to becoming an artist. So far I've lived to tell the tale, and I just think it's really worth it. If you do pursue your dream, you will not end up with this huge regret and the question of why the heck didn't I pursue this dream of mine. I start out as usual using my marker pen, creating a little bit of dynamic lines here, some chaos and some movement. I love putting in marker pen first because I can't rub it out and there will be a sense of that spontaneous energy captured in the drawing, and it won't disappear through all of my rubbing and adjusting that's going to happen later on. Also, I love a little bit of asemic writing. It's just gibberish. You just write these kind of marks that look a little bit like words, but it's not words. And I love that kind of feeling they create. So I just added a little bit of pretend writing here. I wanted to quickly draw your attention to a couple of angles in this picture. I've done this picture a couple of times before, and each time I did it, I found that I flattened this angle quite a bit. So I want to let you know before you get started, so maybe you can remember to use this angle for your benefit. There's another angle, quite steep, coming through the shoulders. I also found I flattened that quite a bit. Here you can see I've just taken my ruler out and I'm actually just looking at that angle coming through the shoulder and coming through the lips, because I just want to try to focus on capturing the dynamic and that triangle that creates in the picture. Time for some pan pastel. I put this pan pastel in and just kind of form a shadow of this reference and just really loosely add it in. I don't worry too much about putting these marks down because I'm just gonna rub into them and add and take away as I please. Let me start out with this embarrassing story that I experienced when I was really young. It will demonstrate how I'm actually overcoming my fears right now. I had to do a presentation and I don't think I had prepared. I think I had probably just skimmed over this subject a little bit, and I find myself stood in front of the class. It's a scene out of your nightmares where you're not prepared, you don't know what to say, and now I have to do this presentation. I remember looking out at the faces in my class and just getting absolutely chemically flushed with adrenaline. My voice, which was already quite quiet, went from quiet to complete quivering, stuttering, stumbling utterance, and the whole experience was shaky and sweat-induced and uncomfortable. I guess I probably got a little bit traumatized when it comes to speaking in front of people and presenting. So that's why I'm super proud to show you right now that I'm here facing my fears in this very moment. I've created a compilation of the most common fears we face as artists, and I wanted to go through them one by one and talk a little bit about how they've shown up in my life and what I've done to overcome them. I asked myself the question, what made me actually do this? At times it's been beyond uncomfortable. And here's my answer. Simply love. Naturally, it was the love for the art that was just that bit stronger than all of the discomfort and all the less pleasurable experiences this journey has given me. This is gonna sound so cliche, but all you need is love. I want to get into my dread list. The first one is fear of stepping out of line. For me, this fear, I think, had a lot to do with a sense of I didn't want to be big-headed. And once you step out as an artist, you are sending out a message to the world that I am good enough to be an artist, and just feels risky to be projecting this image to the world that I think I'm good enough. It feels so big-headed, and people will really enjoy seeing me fall flat on my face when everybody finds out that I just wasn't good enough after all. But I think for so many of us, it's also just not really been the safe thing. It's not what your parents thought was a safe career for you to pursue. And you're just worried to upset people when you decide to do something that's frivolous, that's risky, but it comes from deep within. You don't want to step out of line, but you also don't want to stay where you are. And I think that's why I love this song so much from Moana, where the grandmother sings. She sings about the voice inside Moana that calls her to follow the farthest star. And she sings, that voice inside you is who you are. I just love that so much, because this stepping out of line, it's not to do with anybody else around us. This is about who you are. And you can't follow everybody else's rules for your life or try to live up to everybody else's expectations of you the whole time. It's just, I just think you're going to get sick if you do that. Before I talk about the next point on my dread list, I want to draw your attention to something I've discovered, a mistake that I have the tendency to do when I'm working with this reference. I'm using a ruler to check if I put a horizontal line through where the tip of the nose, where I find the tip of the nose, and I look at where the eye meets that horizontal line. I can see that the eye is on the same level as the nose, and something in me just keeps wanting to bring that eye way up, much higher than that. And I've done it a couple of times before as I've explored this reference. So I just wanted to tell you, just draw your attention to this mistake I think that our brains are naturally wired to make. And this is where we can rewire our brains in the process of learning how to draw. So you can see I just used my ruler there to have a little look at where I've actually placed the eye in relation to where the reference actually has that eye placed. I want to return back to my list, because on my next point on the list, I've got the fear of not being good enough. This one is a lot worse in your head than it is in reality, because in my pursuit of pursuing art as a career, I have at times been face to face with just simply not being good enough. And it's way worse due to the fact that we feel that it's such a frivolous thing to say, I want to be an artist. But it is not a frivolous thing. I want to talk a little bit about a situation I experienced when I was working for this artist. And I remember this one situation where I shared some work I had done with him. I was starting to do more sculpture, and I was presenting some sculpture work that he had commissioned me to do for him. And I remember bringing this to him and him saying to me, it's not good enough. And yeah, it didn't feel great, I have to say. It did not feel good to hear those words spoken over something that you've put your heart into, you've done your best, and then that you're told it is just not good enough. But actually, I found that the fear of facing that situation was way worse than it actually was, in fact, to be in that situation and to overcome. And I realized as well about myself that I was a little bit stronger than I had expected. I reacted by simply working a little harder and finding a way to bring my work up to that level that he expected me to deliver. So I can encourage you that you do not have to be afraid of not being good enough. Just accept it as part of the journey and it's fine. We'll get over that bit in time. The next one on my list is fear of wasting time. And I can tell you it's only a waste of time if you stop. I have 100% faced this fear of wasting time. And this has been a real killer for creativity, because if I start to try to make myself more productive and I allow that kind of stress to come in and become a motivating factor for me, that is the closest I have come to giving up this whole art thing, when I've been convinced by my fear that I need more stress and I need more pressure and I need to produce more. So I have found that I really have to open my mind and allow that there's going to be some waste of time here, and that's okay. I can't push things out any faster than they want to come. There's so many things to learn, and I need to allow myself plenty of time to do this without stress. The next point on my list is the fear of being too old. And to that, I just want to say it's probably the perfect time. Because for myself, I'm 45 now, and I recognize that it's been really useful for me to have a little extra maturity and confidence and just a little less caring about what everybody thinks than what I had in my 20s, to face all of the fears that you have to start to face when you start taking up this calling and this purpose of yours. And I just don't think I had the stamina and the willpower when I was younger. I know I didn't have that because I tried earlier to pursue this, and I just found that I got overcome by a lot of these struggles and tribulations that you face. And I feel a lot stronger and much more capable of facing all of these fears, especially the next one, fear of failure. Just because I tried something and it didn't work out the first time, I kind of had the thought that, well, that's it then, now I've tried that and then it's game over. But I have reframed the way I look at failure completely now. And the way I see failure now is that each failure is not a failure, it was just an attempt that didn't work out. So we have to try something slightly different. And ever since I started this journey, it's been a constant process of recalibrating, problem solving, and finding a new way of doing things when something hasn't worked out, or something worked out but it was too slow. I had to recalibrate and slightly change my direction according to what I found works for me. The next point on my list is the fear of success. It will show up in forms of self-sabotage. You might have a subconscious belief that in order to keep my relationships, I must stay small. And I think there is an element of truth to that, because vulnerability is a brilliant way to bond with people. But if you are bonding with somebody who can only handle the small version of you, I think that's an indicator that you might be in a toxic relationship. I deeply desire the people around me to experience the joy of succeeding in each of their own calling. Fear of success is definitely something I am grappling with. That is a bit of a work in progress going on here. And I do want to add a little disclaimer at this point, because I feel like I'm starting to dig into mental health and things that I'm definitely not qualified to talk about. But I thought it was such a good one, I wanted to include it in the list. Well, now we're at it with the mental health. I might as well dig a little deeper. I find one of the big fears that I have come across in this journey, and this is huge, is the fear of my own ego. And I think there is a bit of a battlefield here. This is where I've come across some of my most painful experiences. And I want to give you a couple of examples here. So I want to take you back to the beginning where I was exploring this whole art thing. Me and my sister had just both figured out at a similar time in our lives that we would like to pursue this. And we had decided to book ourselves in for some more startup shows. And me and my sister both applied to this event in our local community, a little art fair. And I was pretty scared when I created my application, and I sent off this email to the organizer of this show. And not long after that, my sister also sent her application in. Well, I did not get a reply, but my sister did. And this is where I really came face to face with my ego. And this was a fear that was quite mixed up with a few aspects. I think there was quite a big fear that I would be abandoned by my sister, that she would get accepted into this art fair and I would not get a place, and off she goes into the art world and I am left behind. Well, it's a little bit of a dramatic way of thinking, but I think in the beginning of these journeys, things can feel quite black and white. And I remember I really struggled that I did not get a response, and she did. But she contacted the organizer of the event and asked if we could please be considered for this show together as a team, because she needed me and I needed her to be in this together. That's just a partnership that we had formed at the time. And it turns out, then after I had gone through this whole facing my ego really big time, that the organizer of this event just simply hadn't received my email, and it wasn't a personal rejection. But I went through all of the feelings on the register of taking a rejection, feeling not good enough, and my ego received a bit of a blow, to say the least. This particular situation started teaching me that pursuing art as a career is not for the faint of heart, but all of these blows to your ego that you inevitably will receive will just make you stronger and more capable. And I find you get so much respect for yourself that you took the chance of getting a rejection like that, and you did that. Being able to cope with these feelings and face yourself in such a manner, that's a much bigger victory than actually just getting the green light and being accepted everywhere and being accelerated into the heights of success. It creates so much more resilience to face defeat and keep going. And that brings me to my final point on my list. Fear of your own emotions. It was on one of these journeys to one of these art fairs that I've been doing along the line, side by side with my sister. And I find oftentimes the place where I have faced the worst of my fears have been in the car on my way to a show. And it was in the car on my way to one of these shows where I found myself grappling with the thought of, what if I don't sell anything? The show is normally really good, and if I don't sell anything today, what then? And I realized that these what if thoughts could be answered like this: well, then you're gonna feel bad. Yeah, you're gonna feel really, really bad if you don't sell anything on this particular show, especially this one, because it was this particular show that I was on my way to that day is normally a show where I can expect to be a little bit successful. A lot of people who have an understanding for what I have brought to the table in the past have bought things on this particular show. But I just felt so overcome with dread that day that, what if I don't sell anything today? And I remember just responding to myself, well, then you will feel bad. And yeah, that's not great, but at the end of the day, that's just a feeling. And what you are the most afraid of all the fears, the fear of fears, is simply that I was afraid of feeling bad. And that just seems like such a trivial fear to have. But that day, the realization that at the heart of my fears in this whole art thing is actually a deep fear of feeling bad, it kind of put things into a perspective where I could say to myself, well, if I'm afraid of feeling bad, then I'm gonna risk feeling bad. Yeah, so in a way, I think that's quite encouraging. At the end of the day, I just want to say to you, don't live your life trying to feel good the whole time. Live your life and go beyond those boundaries that you have created for yourself, because it's so worth it. And some of the things that I have found on the other side of these fears, I want to mention here at the end is, well, I found resilience and a great respect for myself, because I just persisted and I kept on going. There's been so many challenges along the way now, and I kept on going. Every time I've gone through one of these challenges, I feel a little bit stronger. But also, I had this idea that a lot of these people in the art world are a little bit scary, but my experience has been completely opposite. I have met so many amazing people as a result of it, and I've formed new relationships that are just immediately deep and honest and vulnerable, but at the same time, I feel with these people that they cheer me on. We cheer each other on in a different way, that you can only really cheer each other on in this way if you shared that experience of stepping out and owning yourself as an artist, taking the chance on yourself and actually daring to believe that yes, I might be good enough, and even if I'm not good enough yet, I might just get there anyway. And those relationships that I have discovered are really precious to me. And on the other side of all of those fears, you can find some incredible friendships there as well. Well, I'm super happy that you've stayed with me all the way to the end. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Take care. All the best.